Thank you, and welcome to today's Candidate Forum, brought to you in partnership with City Club of Central Oregon and the League of Women Voters of Deschutes County, two organizations that are passionately nonpartisan and whose purpose today is to engage and inform Oregon voters for the general election. Today we are hosting the candidates for the State Senate 27th District. My name is Kim Scott, League of Women Voters past president, and I am honored to serve as moderator today. First, I'd like to give a quick shout out to City Club's annual sponsors and the League of Women Voters of Deschutes County members. Without their support, we would not be able to bring you today's program. Today's live stream is also made possible by Connect Central Oregon, a nonprofit launched with the assistance of OSU Cascades Innovation Collab. Our sponsors for the entire series of candidate forums are Deschutes Public Library and Buchanan Schmidt LLC. We are grateful for their support for these educational forums. If you're interested in supporting City Club or League of Women Voters, please check out our websites to get more information. Our candidate forums are conducted according to League of Women Voter guidelines. All candidates filed in their race are invited to participate in our forums, and we hope to present voters with all participants. In the interest of fairness, however, we do not let an RSVP of regrets cancel a forum. Thank you to State Senate 27 District candidates for participating in today's forum. We appreciate the gravity of committing to run for office, and our goal is to provide an opportunity for fair and civil discourse. The Oregon State Senate consists of 30 elected members. Senators serve four-year terms and represent districts each containing approximately 127,700 citizens. We will start with opening statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for their opening remarks, and for each question, each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer. At the end, each candidate may give a 2-minute closing statement. For opening statements, we have randomly selected the order, and closing statements will be the reverse of that order. Our questions come from a combination of League and community submitted questions. Questions will be given in a rotating order. So let's get started. We will start with Tim Knopp giving his opening introduction and statement. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening, and I look forward to this forum. I am a 40-year resident of Central Oregon. I've raised my family here. I've operated a small business here. I've been involved in our community as a Little League coach and as a member, board member of the Bend Chamber. I've been active in affordable housing, serving on affordable housing nonprofits, and I'm your current state senator. If you want an authentic Central Oregon voice to represent you in the Oregon State Senate, then I would ask that you return me to the State Senate in the 2021 session, and I would appreciate your vote. The importance of this election cannot be underestimated. The Oregon Senate is currently 18-12, and the Democrats from the Willamette Valley control both the House and the Senate. And so in order for voices across the mountains in Central Oregon and other places to be heard, it's important that we have people who are community-minded and represent those voices. And I've been a voice for OSU Cascades and expanding our campus there, and have brought $40 million worth of bonds there. I've been a voice for small business in the Oregon legislature. I've been a voice for our seniors, and I've been a voice for our students as well. I want to continue to work on the important issues that are going to be in the 2021 session, and I think the most important issue we have to work on is getting people back to work and putting a paycheck in their hands so they can put food on the table and take care of their families in this COVID atmosphere as safely as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Eileen, your introduction and opening statement, please.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm Eileen Kiely. I'm the Democratic candidate for Senate District 27. I'm a mom, a veteran, and I've balanced billion-dollar budgets and negotiated multi-million-dollar contracts as a financial executive for one of the world's largest manufacturers. So my parents raised me to speak up for what was right and to give back to my community and to be a problem solver for issues that matter. These are the values with which I raised my daughter, They're the reason that I served my country as a naval officer. And these are the values that I took to work every day at Daimler Trucks North America and made my company more profitable and our community stronger. 2021 will be the hardest legislative session of our lifetimes because we are dealing with multiple crises and a significant revenue shortfall. We need legislators who are willing to stay at the table and fight for Oregon's recovery. Our next budget must be laser focused on meeting the needs of everyday working Oregonians: housing, healthcare, education, clean air and water, and the living wage jobs that can sustain this. You know, the most important line on any corporation's income statement is revenue. And that's not tax credits and it's not the stock price. It comes from your customers. And those customers are the everyday working Oregonians who sustain this economy. When we have enough to meet our basic needs and a little bit more, that little bit more is the fuel of economic recovery. It's time for new leadership in Salem, one that will not only bring this investment that we need to handle our growth, but also represents the values that we hold now and in our future. And I will be that senator.
Thank you very much, Eileen. Now we'll go on to the questions. They will be in a rotating manner. And Eileen, you are first up, so please keep your mic hot. In the 2021 legislative session, you will be redrawing legislative districts following the completion of the 2020 census. What will you do to ensure that the districts are fair and equitable, representing the people, not the politicians?
Thank you very much for that. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for leading on this issue and educating so many people. You know, people who are inside politics think that the issue is Democrat-Republican, and it's not. The issue is making sure that all Oregonians have their voice heard in Salem. We have great diversity of geography, geology, climate, personality, all through Oregon. And at the basis of Oregon's redistricting law is the idea of making sure that communities of common interest are represented. And that does not mean equal numbers of Democrats and Republicans. It means that a city like Bend is kept together. It means that smaller cities in Deschutes County also have a voice because they are tied to our economic health. We have a lot of diversity just in our county. And right now we're represented by three separate Senate districts and 4 House districts, and our needs are scattered among those different districts. So I really want to focus on concentrating Deschutes so that we can address the important issues like transportation and housing that we have to deal with as a county, not as separate districts. And the other thing to remember is that in redistricting, we also have to make sure that we are representing underrepresented communities. Our BIPOC communities need to have a fair voice. So do our tribes that are scattered around the state. So it is not an issue about, do we have the right number of Democrats and Republicans? It's about, are we representing the voice of the people? And that's what I pledge to do.
Thank you, Eileen. Tim, same question. Would you like me to repeat?
No, I got the question. So redistricting is one of the most important things that's going to happen in the legislative session because it determines what representation you will have for the next 10 years. And I have worked with the Independent Party of Oregon, with the League of Women Voters, with the Libertarian Party and many other parties as well to try to come up with a redistricting plan that really takes it out of the legislature. And unfortunately, there was a ballot measure that came up short of signatures that would have allowed the people to vote on what type of redistricting they want. So currently, the way it works is the legislature has the first opportunity to redraw the lines, and if they fail to do so by July 1st, then the Secretary of State redraws those lines. In the last redistricting, for the first time in a very long time, the legislature was able to come together, work in a bipartisan way, come up with a bipartisan plan, and to pass that plan. Previously, it had been done by the Secretary of State, and I've been through at least one of those, and they were very partisan. So it's really important that we hear from all voices, from all communities, and make sure that the redistricting plan is fair, and that people of like communities are put together. There are some districts in the state that tend to have, I think, a little more Portland representation than if they were more compact. And so it's really important that we have compact districts. And so I would look forward to working with all parties and all citizens to come up with their redistricting plan, not just a legislative plan.
Great. Thank you very much, Tim. Tim, keep your mic on. Second question, you get this first. COVID-19 cases have been shown to be increasing in our state. Epidemiologists are talking about a second wave that will coincide with the flu season. Are you willing to follow the suggested scientific guidelines, even if they include shutting down again everything but essential services if the crisis worsens? And how will you, as a state senator, help everyday Oregonians during this continued crisis?
Well, I've said all along that it's important that we all do our part to make sure that we're protecting each other during COVID-19. And so initially that meant spending several weeks essentially with all of us more or less in a quarantine situation. And that was mainly because we had a lack of supply of personal protection equipment for our first responders and medical workers. And so really important that we all accomplished that goal. We got through that first wave. And this is a serious disease. I was exposed at one point in May and had to go into quarantine. Thankfully, I did not get COVID-19, but I know many people who have, and it affects people differently. And so it's really important that we are working as best we can to follow the CDC guidelines. The issue of shutting down again would be incredibly devastating to our small businesses. There are studies and surveys that show that just a few more weeks or a few more months of a shutdown or a near shutdown would put these businesses out of work and destroy the lives of people who have worked decades for their family business, or trying to put together a portfolio that helps their family. And so I'm not in favor of a strict shutdown that would close up businesses. We need to learn to do the best we can and as safely as we can in living with COVID, wearing our masks, doing our social distancing, and protecting the vulnerable and making sure that we're protecting each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Eileen, same question. Would you like me to repeat?
Thanks, I think I got it. So let's start with what we can all do, because I think my opponent and I agree that it is critical that we keep our economy open. And there's something the government can do, and there's something we can all do. And let's talk about that first. Wear a mask, wash your hands, respect the distance. This is how we keep our businesses open, and it's how we're going to get our schools back open, because that's another critical issue for families. They are missing that support that they get from schools, and our kids are missing the interaction that they get. The problem that we have with COVID, and it's going to be with us for a long time, even after we have a vaccine, it may take a while for us to actually get it all under control. But what we need to do is keep the load down below what our healthcare system can handle, because that's when it becomes a crisis. When we start having to do crisis healthcare, then people are having long-term effects and dying unnecessarily. We need to find these cases early, which is testing and tracing, so that we can find them early. And we need to focus on PPE for all of our frontline workers. And let's remember, The clerks at my IGA are frontline workers. So mask up, wash your hands. And as a government, we need to invest in helping getting that testing and tracing done. And that means helping our county health departments get it done. And we need to make sure that that PPE is out there for all of our frontline workers. Thanks.
Thank you, Eileen. Eileen, you get the next question again.
Thank you.
Wildfires in Oregon continue to burn as we meet. Why or why not do you think human-caused climate change is a contributing factor? And what would you do to improve this?
Boy, you're actually asking two questions there. Yes, I believe that climate-caused climate change is affecting wildfires because we're seeing drier and hotter summers, which is increasing the fire hazard. And there are things that we should do about it for greenhouse gas. But I think it's really important for us to realize that, you know, this crisis isn't in the future, it's here. And we are paying for it with Oregon homes and businesses and even lives. We cannot wait to take action because yes, it will cost us something to take climate action. Doing nothing will cost us everything. We are not going to be able to prevent every fire, even as we work to reduce greenhouse gases, but we can help make Oregon safer. And I think this is a lesson that we can teach the rest of Oregon from here in Central Oregon. We have learned so much through the Deschutes Forest Collaborative. And this started back with the Aubrey Hall fire back in the 1990s. We know defensible spaces. I live in Sun River. We are an extremely high fire risk, and we can teach the rest of the state about defensible spaces. And I was very surprised to find in this latest conflagration that the database that the state created to assist local governments in enforcing and educating people about defensible spaces, it wasn't available in many of the counties that were affected by this. And I wonder if we were, you know, had spread this knowledge across the state, how many homes and businesses and lives could we have saved this summer? So it's two problems that we have to work on, but I'm ready to work on both of them.
Thank you, Eileen. Tim, same question. Would you like me to repeat?
No, that's fine. Thank you. I think it's really important that we have really a two-pronged approach to this. And yes, I don't think there's any doubt that there is a human factor in climate change that definitely affects the wildfires and our forests. And so one of the first things that we need to do is around the state, we need to make sure that they are participating in what Deschutes County has done, which is the Deschutes County Collaborative. And they've done a really good job of making sure that our forests are treated and thinned and are healthier than they otherwise would if they were left without good forest management. So forest management is certainly a key to this. Secondly, though, there is more to be done as it relates to climate. And obviously there were bills last session, there were bills the session before relating to climate. And I think one of the key focuses that we need to have to reduce and change our kind of our carbon footprint is we need to move toward more electric vehicles, and that means electric infrastructure. And so it's important that we have an infrastructure plan for electric vehicles. And then I think we need to also restore our grasslands. It's critically important for carbon sequestration. But there's no doubt that Oregonians care deeply about this issue and that we value the investment. We want to make sure that it lasts for generations.
Thank you, Tim. Please keep your mic hot. You'll also be starting with the next question. What gun safety measures, if any, would you support to decrease gun violence, which is so prevalent, such as in school shootings, suicides, and domestic violence?
Well, I think it's really important that people who, especially those who own guns, are using them and are storing them as safely as you possibly can. There's obviously an issue of being able to access that firearm if you are being threatened in some way in your home or wherever you might be. It's also important to educate kids about the danger of a loaded firearm. And so, you know, I've grown up in a house that has firearms in it, and my grandparents also had guns. And so they taught us at a very early age that you need to respect a weapon and always assume that it's loaded, and to not touch them unless you're around an adult. And I think it's critically important. And so everybody needs to individually, I think, take that issue very seriously and store their guns safely. I also voted for a measure in the legislature that made sure that those people who have the ability to hurt themselves or through domestic abuse to hurt others, that they would be allowed to have a hearing, but if it can be shown that they're a danger to themselves or others, that their guns would be taken away from them for a time until it can be proved that they can deal with them safely. But I do support our Constitution, both the Oregon Constitution and the US Constitution, and it's very clear that you have a right to keep and bear arms, but you also have a responsibility to do that in a safe manner.
Thank you very much, Tim. Eileen, same question.
Thank you. And, you know, in my conversations with voters, I've really noticed a difference between 2018 and now. There's a very different awareness around guns and gun safety than there was even 2 years ago. People are talking about it more. And I mean, our neighbors who are gun owners are talking about it more. I had a great conversation with a dad who said, you know, I grew up with guns and my dad never locked up his guns. But in today's world, you better believe I lock up the guns. And that is kind of the story about, I think one of the best things that we can do is safe storage. And I think there was a significant shift in the last safe storage bill, which didn't go through because of the walkout, but it was specifically focused on strict liability. So it doesn't criminalize you for not storing your gun safely, but it does establish that if you do not take care of your weapon, you are responsible for it. And that, you know, helps the free market enforce it, because then you're making a choice. Are you going to pay more on your homeowner's insurance, or are you going to have a gun safe? So it really does take that into the market, and it reminds people that, yeah, you absolutely have a right to own a gun, but you don't have a right to point it at somebody. Loaded or not, that's assault. And unless you're directly threatened and in need of self-defense, you've broken the law. And I think that our responsible gun owners, you know, so many of our neighbors who grew up with guns, like my opponent, that we teach the rest of Oregon that this is the responsibility. Background checks, safe storage, and, you know, watching out for your neighbors, which is what the boyfriend bill that my opponent referred to is. It's helping people out so we can avoid our biggest gun issue, which is suicide.
Thank you, Eileen. You'll also be taking the next question.
Thank you.
The vast majority of the medical community support all children being vaccinated. There are some constituents who do not vaccinate their children. Doctors are saying that the success of the COVID-19 vaccine when it is available is dependent on getting a high enough percentage of the population being vaccinated, over 75 to 80%. Do you support policies that ensure that children are vaccinated for COVID-19 and other communicable diseases?
I do support vaccines to support herd immunity. And I was very surprised when my daughter got to high school and I wasn't up to date and had to get her up to date because I thought we were on top of things. But here's the thing, there are people that are going to have problems with vaccines. We have people that are immune compromised. And that's why we need a vaccine mandate, so that we can establish the herd immunity to protect those people in our population. That's the really critical issue. So I believe in a health exemption. This is a decision that you need to make with your healthcare provider. But I think it's important to remember that your healthcare provider is not the internet or a conspiracy theory or your neighbor down the street. Your healthcare provider knows your child's record, and you should be able to discuss that with them. If you have that healthcare exemption, you are exactly the person that we need herd immunity for, and exactly the person that we have the mandate for. So yeah, I think this is a decision between you and your healthcare provider. And but otherwise, we need to establish that herd immunity to protect our most vulnerable.
Thank you very much, Eileen. Tim, same question. Would you like me to repeat?
No, thank you.
Alrighty.
Vaccines are important to our healthcare, and I believe that decision is best left in the hands of the individual and the doctor and those parents who are working with their doctors to make sure their kids are vaccinated. And nobody knows the health of those children better than the parent or the doctor. And my position can generally be summed up in that I affirm medical decisions must be made with respect for patients' rights to privacy and to freedom to have control of their own lives based on fully informed consent. And what I just read you is part of the Democratic Party platform. So this isn't a Republican issue. It's not a Democrat issue. It's really an individual rights issue. And just like in dealing with COVID-19, we need to make sure that we are working to take care of each other and to have as healthy a society as we can. But it's also true that in rare circumstances that vaccines injure and kill people. The government puts out a report every quarter of people who are paid by the government because of these injuries. So the government has no liability other than the liability fund that's been created by the pharmaceutical companies that they pay into. And so it's important where there is risk that there is. So I have been supportive of some exemptions for vaccines, but in the end, it's really important that we do have herd immunity and that it's an individual choice.
Thank you very much. Tim, you'll have the next question also. Describe your one or two most pressing issues for the 2021 legislative session. What legislation would you propose or support to address these issues?
Well, I think the biggest issue is getting our economy back on track, getting people back to work, getting a paycheck in their hands so they can put food on the table and taking care of their families, because there are too many people who are in crisis right now, and I've helped hundreds of people with unemployment. And unemployment at some point, especially the federal increase in it, is going to run out, and people aren't going to be able to make it for long periods of time on unemployment. And so they need good family wage jobs here in Central Oregon. And we had near full employment before COVID had a huge effect, obviously, on the economy. And so, I think that's the number one issue. So I think we're going to need to be sensitive to, especially small businesses as they are restarting, and to make sure that they have the capital to be able to do that, but they're able to achieve, for instance, like in the restaurant industry, people can't make it with 30 to 50% occupancy in their restaurants, and they're going to have to be higher than that. And the same goes with lots of other businesses. And so whether you retail or restaurant or finance, healthcare, what have you, it's going to be really important. And so I think that's the number one issue. Obviously, I want to work on OSU Cascade bonds and continue the expansion there. And then I have a bill that I want to pursue that provides a property tax freeze for low-income seniors and for those who are disabled, because now more than ever, they're being stretched thin. And what I don't want to see is our seniors become part of our homeless statistics, because there are already too many people who are struggling with homelessness. So those are some of the priorities that I pursue.
Thank you very much. Eileen, same question. Would you like me to repeat?
Yes, I would.
Describe your 1 or 2 most pressing issues for 2021 legislative session. What legislation would you propose or support to address these issues?
My biggest issue is going to be about the budget. Because the simple fact of the matter is you can talk about something all you want, but if it's not in your budget, or your dog, it's not going to happen. And so I think our budget needs to be laser focused on those kitchen table issues, which is housing, healthcare, education, clean air and water. And those are the things that we need in order to create living wage jobs as well, and make that and sustain them through our group. What the state can do is to invest in Central Oregon. We are the fastest growing region in this state, and yet we're not getting our fair share of investment. You know, my opponent has voted against some important funding that would have brought infrastructure for affordable housing here, because transportation and housing are totally interconnected. We could not be developing Southeast Bend right now with affordable housing if we had not built the Southeast Murphy Road extension. And it took state money to get that done. It takes state money to get the Cooley Road interchange done, which is now underway. We need to finish US 97 Parkway through Bend, and we also need to finish it through the south end of Redmond. And that requires state funding, but that's the kind of infrastructure that the state can help us build. And also, it's the investment, it's the funding, it's the bonding authority that can help us with our affordable housing projects here. And so we need to have a senator who's willing to negotiate for that, fight for it, and get the funding done so that we can have the benefits for the taxes that we're having to pay.
Thank you very much. Eileen, you'll be doing this next question first also. The Oregon Department of Correction houses nearly 15,000 inmates. According to DOC, as of October 2nd, 264 staff and 1,072 inmates had tested positive for COVID-19. 11 inmates have died. What more can our state senators and representatives do to protect the health of inmates and staff during the pandemic?
Yeah, our corrections budget has ballooned in the last 20 years. I think it was 400 million in 1996, and it is now up over 1.8 billion. And a lot of that is because we are, in fact, over incarcerating. We are just jailing too many people. And not only are we taking on the cost of housing them and feeding them and taking them out of the economy where they can be productive, we are also taking on their health responsibilities. And that health responsibility has been magnified by COVID. So we have overcrowding in our corrections facilities, and our corrections officers are paying the price for this as well. They are all on forced overtime because the head count is not reflective of what the actual prison population is, and only the legislature can raise the head count. So we had a problem going in with overcrowding and difficult situations. I don't see another way to get around it except for us to take a look at who needs to be released, who needs to be released early. We need to look at the nonviolent crimes that are locked up. Is it really serving Oregon's best interests to lock people up and turn them into a burden for taxpayers, as opposed to helping them rehabilitate, especially in healthcare or in behavioral health issues or drug addiction, and getting them back into the economy where they can contribute and become taxpayers.
Thank you, Eileen. Tim, same question. Would you like me to repeat? Tim? Did we lose Tim?
There he is.
There you are. You need to. Okay, while you're unmuting, I'm going to read it again. The Oregon Department of Correction houses nearly 15,000 inmates. According to DOC, as of October 2nd, 264 staff and 1,072 inmates have tested positive for COVID-19. 11 inmates have died. What more can our state senators and representatives do to protect the health of inmates and staff during the pandemic?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's really important that we trust the professional staff and our Department of Corrections. I think this also goes to show, based on the statistics that you gave, that it's clear that COVID can reach anybody, anywhere, and it can have an effect. And we don't know what effect it'll have on different people because it affects people so differently. It's important that we're making sure that our corrections staff and frontline workers have all the protective equipment that they can have. It's also important that the inmates are following the best protocols, which are clearly wearing a mask, being at least 6 feet apart, and washing your hands with good hygiene. And I think the Corrections Department has done a good job in trying to move inmates around to lessen the burden and the possibility of further infections. But the governor already has released about 50 inmates. Most of those were people who were selling drugs at some point and were put in prison for it. But there are very few people in our prison system who are not violent offenders. And so I would oppose releasing further prisoners to try to deal with the issue. We have an obligation to the public to make sure that we're providing them with safety. And I think we need to trust the healthcare professionals and the corrections professionals to deal with this issue in the prison system.
Great. Thank you very much, Tim. And you'll have the next question also. If you are elected and the Oregon Senate is about to vote on a bill that you know is likely to pass that is supported by the public, but your political party does not support, will you walk out rather than vote?
There's been 3 major walkouts. I participated in one of them, and the reason I did was because I don't believe the public was aware and engaged of what was happening and how much that bill would cost in terms of lost jobs and increased essentially taxes through regulation on their fuel and on their utilities and just everyday products really that would be affected. And I also didn't think that the bill, which was so complicated and so complex that it couldn't even be scored by our nonpartisan legislative staff. And so, this was a bill that basically needed to be simpler, fair, and have all voices heard. And so I've said that it's important for all voices to be heard, and especially those voices that are outside the Willamette Valley. And the Democrat supermajority wanted to go ahead and run their bill. They stopped talking to us and just said, we're done. And wanted us to essentially stand there so they could move their agenda through. And we didn't think that was the right thing to do to represent our constituents. And so I do think it should be rare. And I know that this particular district, that's Senate District 27, opposed that bill. And I think they still do. Now, would they support a different version of that bill? I think they would. And I've said all along that I would be willing to support a climate bill, but not one that is expensive, that essentially raises taxes and costs us jobs. And so, I deal with it on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you, Tim. Eileen, same question. Would you like me to repeat?
Please.
If you are elected and the Oregon Senate is about to vote on a bill that you know is likely to pass, that is supported by the public but not your political party, will you walk out rather than vote?
No. When I was negotiating, I had to negotiate $500 million of parts every year for Daimler in my last rotation. And in many cases, I had the losing hand because I was dealing with products that were old and outdated and didn't have a lot of leverage. But I never left the table. And I think it's important to realize that common ground is not something halfway between you and me. It's not Solomon splitting the baby. Common ground is something that we both care about so that we can stick to our values, but we need to compromise our tactics in order to get it done. Climate change is, it's an existential crisis. It's about the survival of our children and their children and their children. And I said, it's gonna cost us something, but it's gonna cost us everything if we don't take action. Even if I have a losing hand, I'm still gonna fight for the best I can possibly get from my constituents and for all of Oregon, because that's our job. You're not always gonna have the most popular point of view, but if you make yourself heard, you can at least change part of the conversation. You can keep moving forward to the future that we need to see. But if you run away, you don't have a voice. You've given up your voice, and I will never give up my voice.
Thank you, Eileen. You'll have the next question.
Thank you.
6 bills concerning police reform were passed in the state legislature in the June special session. Please comment on how effective these reforms will be, and what, if any, additional specific measures would you support in order to support the Black Lives Matter movement?
Okay. Yes, I did support them, and I probably lost a couple of endorsements because of that. I think one of the critical things is that we need to remember that it's important not just to point out what our opponents are doing wrong, but it's important to make sure that we talk about what our friends need to improve as well. And I think this is critically important for all of our public employees, elected or hired. But we have certain basic principles in this country that we were founded on. And the first was all men are created equal, because of course that was written by white men. And in our quest to become a more perfect union, we have been expanding that, because really at the core of it was, in America, we believe that it's not who your parents are or where you were born. You are not born better than another human being. And so I believe that, at the very least, everyone who is taking a taxpayer paycheck should be able to say, I denounce white supremacy. And you should be able to say, Black Lives Matter. Because if you truly believe in that, then we know that Black Lives Matter, and we need to act like it does. So if that means that we have to call out our friends when they say things inappropriate, when they rely on their privilege, then that's what we need to do. Because we will all do better. I mean, the more Oregonians, individual Oregonians are successful, the more we are all successful. And we need to be bringing people in, not pushing them out. And I think that that's a critical job for all of our public employees, but especially our elected officials.
Thank you, Eileen. Tim, same question. Would you like me to repeat?
Yes, would you please?
6 bills concerning police reform were passed in the state legislature's June special session. Please comment on how effective these reforms will be, and what, if any, additional specific measures you would support in order to support the Black Lives Matter movement.
Thank you. Well, I believe it's critically important that we respond to the people. And what happened to George Floyd and others was reprehensible and can't be tolerated. And it really comes down to this, is that I support the protesters who are protesting legally. And I support the police officers who are acting in a legal manner. And we do need change. And the way to bring about that change is to bring voice to it, to speak truth to power. And many people are doing that. Unfortunately, that movement has, over the past 3 months, been somewhat hijacked by those who want violence and who don't want the police at all. I supported the 6 bills for police reform because I think it's important. Were they perfect? No. Did they make progress? Yes. I think we need to move further, though. I proposed a couple of the same bills that we ultimately ended up passing. And I think there are a couple other things that we can do. I think one is we need to have a discussion with our law enforcement community about demilitarizing. I don't think our police forces need military equipment. There's plenty of equipment out there that isn't from our military that they can use to police our communities. And we need to make sure that it's being done to improve the safety of our citizens and the safety of our officers.
Thank you very much, Tim. You'll have the next question. What is your position on campaign finance reform?
Well, you're going to have an opportunity to vote on campaign finance reform on the November ballot. That campaign finance bill is a bill that I wrote and that Senator Jeff Golden, Democrat from Ashland, joined me with. And about 20 years ago, when I was in the House for about 6 years, I worked on campaign finance reform with a senator, then representative, now senator, named Mark Hass. And we got beat up pretty good by our own sides when we brought up this issue. And I told everybody at the time that the time will come when the people will demand campaign finance reform. None of us want to spend all of our time or a good portion of our time during the campaign raising money. It's not fun. And there are outsized influences for that money. And we run the risk of a few billionaires and millionaires on both sides of the equation controlling who gets elected. And I think that's wrong, and it's not a good position to be in. So I encourage people to support my campaign finance ballot measure that's going to be on the November ballot. And then we can have it, which it just simply allows for limits. And then we can have a discussion about what those limits look like. And, you know, I have no doubt that that will be a vigorous discussion, but it's really important that we create transparency in the process and that we get the big money and the dark money out of politics and give the people a bigger voice.
Thank you very much, Tim. Eileen, same question. What is your position on campaign finance reform?
Well, my opponent and I agree on Measure 107. Please vote for it. Because that is a first step in campaign finance reform. As I think far too many of us are aware, there are no limits to donations in Oregon. Phil Knight gave millions of dollars to Newt Buehler all by himself in the 2018 election. And that's a shocking thing. It is shocking. It's shocking what my opponent and I are spending for a job that pays $24,000 a year. Oh, no, I'm sorry, it's $30,000 a year now. That shouldn't be happening. I mean, that's just, it's a waste of money. And the people are upset about it, and rightly so. But, you know, limiting those donations is a start. But we also need to improve our transparency, because I think one of the problems that we have is we don't know who's funding who. And we have a tendency or there is an opportunity, even on our system, where the reporting is pretty good, to play 3-card Monty with campaign donations. The money might start off in a 501c6 and then move from there to a PAC and move from there to yet another PAC and then another PAC, so that a large donation, especially large corporate donations, can be hidden behind all of these other PACs. And I would like to limit transfer PAC to PAC in the same way that we're talking about limiting directly to candidates and issues. But also, I support Dan Rayfield's idea that we need to have enough transparency so that you basically have to say who are your top 5 funders in any campaign ad or print ad, because I think the public deserves to know, and that's good financial management.
Great, thank you very much, Eileen. The next question is yours also. There has been a disruption of on-site education, making online instruction the norm due to COVID-19. How will you push to ensure adequate high-speed internet connections for rural and lower income households to enable the children to benefit from this learning mode?
Okay. And I think you know that there was a bill just in this last special session to expand high-speed broadband to rural areas. This is a critical issue. If you've spent enough time in rural Oregon and rural Washington, as I have, you've been in places where the businesses rely on metered satellite to run their business. You can't compete in the modern world with that limitation. And of course, COVID has shown us that that's also an issue for our students. There is so much that we could do for students who are disadvantaged by by being in small rural schools through distance learning. And with this challenge, we also see new opportunities. But at the basis of that is that we have to expand rural broadband. This is the new utility of the 21st century. And Oregon led in rural electrification long before the federal government got around to it. We can lead in this as well by helping bring more advanced technology to support our rural communities. Even here in Deschutes County, my opponent and I have both experienced problems with broadband. And, it will take government investment, but this is the kind of infrastructure that the state should be doing to support not only our education, but to support our businesses so that you can make a living in any county in Oregon. You don't have to move to a city in order to be able to compete in the modern economy.
Thank you very much, Eileen. Tim, same question. Would you like me to repeat?
Yes, please.
There has been a disruption of on-site education, making online instruction the norm due to COVID-19. How will you push to ensure adequate high-speed internet connections for rural and lower income households to enable their children to benefit from this learning mode?
Well, unfortunately, it's not going to happen overnight. There was investments that had already been scheduled for expanding broadband and its potential in the legislature. There was a cell phone tax that was passed in the last session. I voted against it because I'm as concerned about the connectivity of those who are low income and seniors and who are already having a difficult time paying their bills. And whether it's 10 cents, 50 cents, or $1.50, it all starts to add up. And that's a month potentially. So I think it's really important that we do make the investments. The critical element, though, really is that we ultimately need to get kids back into the classroom as safely as possible. And there are many reasons for that, because not every student is going to be able to learn online. And I've had multiple people contact me who are parents who said, my student has an IEP, an individual education program, and the online education does not work for them. And so that means some of our students are being disadvantaged by what's currently happening. And there's all kinds of mental health issues that are happening, and lots of anxiety and stress on our students. And I don't think anybody really believes that by doing this in mass, that it's going to be better than in the classroom instruction. And so we need to move toward that and work with the districts to make sure that they have good plans and that they can do that as safely as possible and do that as soon as possible, so our students can get back to a more normal education for them.
Thank you, Tim. And you'll have the next question. What should the legislature do to improve racial and social justice?
Well, I believe it's critically important that we legislate with intent. Now, let me give you an example. I was approached by a BIPOC community member and of the legislature, and he asked me to be involved in Oregon Voting Rights Act bill this past session. And we worked hard on that bill, and I said, absolutely, I will. And essentially what it did was it made it easier for minority members to be able to run in districts that they live in. And it expanded the ability for them to run in those community college districts and school board districts and so on. And it's really important that we are working to expand and to understand our knowledge about what people are going through, because we are a community, and we are stronger when we're united. And quite frankly, I think that's what terrifies the government the most, is that we will unite. And you know, people of color have certainly experienced racism. There's no question about that. And we need to do everything we can to eliminate that in our society, because you know, racism anywhere is really an affront to humanity. And so we all need to be working together. And that's just one bill of many that I worked on. And I'm actually honored to receive the League of Minority Voters Liberty and Hope Award this coming weekend at their at their awards banquet, because of what I've done on minority voting rights.
Thank you very much, Tim. Eileen, same question. What should the legislature do to improve racial and social justice?
Representation matters. You know, when I was a kid, there were a lot of laws that disadvantaged women, not because our leaders intended to do that, but they were all men and they didn't know our everyday issues. Women started running for office and gaining leadership positions, and that started to change for us. It's a lot better world for me than I expected when I was a kid. I've been able to accomplish things that I didn't even know were possible back then for women. And we need to make sure that we do that for our BIPOC communities as well. And also, you know, for our disabled community, for anyone that doesn't fit into that definition of the norm. We need to make it a lot easier. Campaign finance reform is a big thing, because we need to make it a lot easier for people that are not currently represented to get into elected office. And our legislature this year, even after the elections, is still going to be a majority white legislature. You know, I always committed to hiring a diverse team to work for me, not because it was politically correct, but because it was the smart thing to do. It allowed me to see things from other people's point of view. Other perspectives are part of our strength. And so I personally, on my staff, want to make sure that my staff is bringing in some of the underrepresented people in Oregon, whether it's LGBTQ or a person of color. But having somebody on my staff will actually remind me to look at the things that I don't see normally. You know, because we all see through our own lens, but the broader we can make it, the better decision making we can do.
Thank you, Eileen. This will be the last question. You'll have it first. The League of Women Voters feels very strongly about civil discourse. What do you think can be done to reverse the polarization of the political parties and citizens in our nation?
Oh, that's me first, sorry. As I said earlier, those of us inside politics thinks it's about Democrat and Republican, and it's not. It's about the voice of the people. And that's what matters. I think one of the strengths that I will bring is that I will be that rare Democrat from our side of the mountains who can speak to the majority caucus, but also knows the issues of, my fellow senators who are on this side of the mountain. I can negotiate for all of us. I think the hardest thing is, that our primary system forces people out to the extremes. And so many of our incumbents are more worried about being primaried than they are a general election. And I think opening up our primaries is one of the best things what we can do to get better representation in Oregon and to fight, this partisan bickering. Because if your biggest worry is whether or not you're going to get primaried from the right or primaried from the left, you cannot run effectively. You can't work effectively if getting reelected is your biggest concern. So I think opening up our primaries, Oregonians deserve primaries. They do. Neither my opponent nor I had one, so in the general election, we're all you get to choose from. But if we'd had primaries, then you would have had more choices. But the more people who participate in choosing the candidates, the better off we all are. And the less likely we are to run to our partisan corners, because it won't be a safe haven anymore.
Thank you very much, Eileen. Tim, same question. Would you like me to repeat?
Yes, please.
The League of Women Voters feels very strongly about civil discourse. What do you think can be done to reverse the polarization of the political parties and citizens in our nation?
I think it's a commitment of legislators, all 90, to commit to listening and hearing, respecting the others in the chamber. Too often they divide into caucuses, determine what positions they're going to have, and then just try to drive an agenda. And the goal seems to be that they just drive that agenda regardless of how it affects others. And I've been the most bipartisan senator in the building. I was there to work on equal pay, and we passed the strongest equal pay law in the country. Protected people regardless of gender, regardless of sexual orientation, regardless of race, national origin, multiple other categories. That bill came to the Senate on a partisan vote. And by staying and listening and caring and actually trying to resolve the issues that the other side had, and the other side truly trying to resolve the issues that we had with the bill, we were not only able to make it a bipartisan bill, we were able to make it a unanimous bill in the legislature. And it takes that kind of commitment day in and day out. And that's what I've done. So whether it's on equal pay or paid family leave or PERS or the budget or on taxes, I've been that person who has literally sometimes stood alone, including on things like anti-sexual harassment bills, to be that person who reached across the aisle to try to make that civil discourse happen.
Thank you very much, Tim. We're now going to be moving on to our closing statements. I want to thank you both for your very well thought out and thoughtful answers to all of our questions. Eileen, you'll be first with a closing statement for 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. My opponent has been in politics for 25 years and I've only been in for 3. But in 3 years, and 2 campaigns of talking to voters, I've learned a lot. And people are really disgusted about politics because they feel it's corruption and everyone is in it for themselves. And I think politics is either going to make you a better person or a worse person. If you're in it for your next election, for your own power, it's going to make you a worse person. But if you listen to voters and you hear their stories, then you realize that your job is about carrying their hopes and dreams. It's about empowering the people who elect you. And carrying the hopes and dreams of my neighbors it's a very humbling experience. And it's an honor and a privilege. And when I go to Salem, I'm not going there for a career. I'm going there to take the lessons of my career into Salem, which I think are important. Budgeting, negotiating, matching your mission, paying for what you say you want, helping people get their good ideas paid for. That was my job. And I think that's something that we need in Salem. But I think it's also important to remember that even when I'm in Salem, it isn't about me. It's about the hopes and the dreams of the people who sent me there. That's my job. That's the duty that I plan to serve. My name's Eileen Kiely, and I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eileen. Tim, your time for your 2-minute statement. Thank you.
Thank you. First off, I want to thank my opponent for her service in the Navy. I honor that service and I respect that service. And so I just wanted to say that. I have been in the Senate for 2 terms, and it's been an honor. And the thing that makes the most difference to the people I serve sometimes are issues that matter to no one else but them. They've got an issue with a state agency. They've got an issue with some local government that they need help with. And solving those issues is the most rewarding thing you can do, and it's the most important thing you can do. When you enter the office, you take an oath to support the Constitution of the United States of America and of the state of Oregon. And I take that very seriously. So to me, as your senator, my goal is to defend your individual constitutional rights, to save and improve as many lives as I can, and to make a difference for the people that I represent. No one will work harder for you. Usually the first person in the building and one of the last ones to leave. And we've been able to accomplish a lot together. And those have been issues that you've cared about, because I don't have an agenda. My agenda is what you send me there to do. And almost everything that I've worked on is something that you've asked me to work on. And so thank you for that opportunity. And I would be honored to have your vote for State Senator, Senate District 27 in this general election. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the candidates for participating in today's forum. We know this season is grueling, and we appreciate you showing up and giving such thoughtful answers today. And thanks to the League of Women Voters of Deschutes County and City Club of Central Oregon for partnering to get this information out. Remember, if you enjoyed today's forum and would like to help cover the cost, please consider making a donation to City Club on their website at cityclubco.org. If you are interested in becoming a member or making a contribution, please contact the League through their website, www.lwvdeschutes.org. Thank you to our Candidates Forum Series sponsors, the Deschutes Public Library and Buchanan Schmidt LLC. The next candidate forum will be State Representative 53rd District and will air on Thursday, October 8th at 7 p.m. Please be sure to watch. Thank you for your interest and in keeping democracy alive. This was pre-recorded Tuesday, October 5th, 2020. Thank you for watching.